What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about the Star Wars, the original trilogy graphic novel adaptation. This is about 100 to 200 pages, it's closer to 200 pages of an adaptation of A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. This is by some creators I have never heard of before. Alessandro Ferrari, Matteo Piana, Igor Chimiso, and Alessandro Pastorvicio. This book is taking the original 3 movies and putting it in comic book form. And I have to say, I don't really understand what the point of something like this is. It kind of reminds me of this, which is a comic book adaptation of the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher Batman movies. And if you go back to when Star Wars first came out, the first Star Wars movie came out in 1977. Peter Jackson, he was old enough, he was maybe 12 when that came out, and he remembers going to the theater like 10 or 12 times to watch that movie, because in the 1970s, when a movie left the theaters, you had no idea when you were going to get to see the movie again. They didn't have home releases yet. That was just starting to be a thing. You had the format wars between VHS and Betamax, and VHS, I think, won the format wars in 1980. So right around the time when the Star Wars original trilogy was coming out, that was when the concept of this movie is eventually going to come out on video, and then you can own it in your home and watch it as many times as you want, whenever you want. But when A New Hope came out, that idea was still very foreign to a lot of people. So back in the day, if a movie came out like Jaws or Indiana Jones or Star Wars, you would also have a novelization. And a lot of people latched onto those because you might remember watching Indiana Jones in the theater, but then you didn't know when you were going to get to see it again. And also, VHS tapes were much more expensive back then than they are now, especially now. But nowadays, if a movie comes out in theaters and you say, I don't want to watch it in theaters, maybe I can stream it for $4. Back then, it was a little bit more steep. If you wanted to own an actual copy of Star Wars, it was probably going to cost you over $20 to get a brand new VHS tape of Star Wars. And so, if you bought the novelization of Star Wars, which was going to be less than $5, you were essentially recreating the experience of watching the movie in the theater, but you would also get more. There might be scenes that didn't make it into the final cut of the movie that were in the novelization, because usually the novelization was based on an earlier script than what was filmed with. And then after they filmed something, they might realize, we're going to cut this. And so, if you bought the novelization of a movie, I can understand why you would do that in that time period. But this book came out in 2016, long after the idea of an adaptation of a movie, I feel like, has kind of gone away. Because nowadays, if you say, hey, I remember watching Star Wars when I was a kid, I want to watch it again, you could probably stream it on half a dozen different websites. You could go to eBay and then order a DVD or a Blu-ray and then have it within a few days. So the idea of, I watched this movie and I want to recreate that experience is very different now than it was in the 1970s. So I don't really understand the idea or the concept behind, let's take the original trilogy and pretty faithfully put it in comic book form. Because anyone who wants to go back and relive the original trilogy can do that. Now, you might argue, well, what about all the different re-releases? I want to go and experience the original theatrical cut. Is this closer to the theatrical cut than the more recent releases? No. Specifically, I'm thinking of Han shooting Greedo. This has one of the later editions where Greedo also shoots at Han as Han is shooting Greedo. So if you were thinking, well, I like Star Wars as it appeared in the theater originally, and I want something closer to that, you're not really going to get that either. So I don't really understand what the point of this was. It kind of reminds me of the Watchmen movie. If you watch the theatrical version of Zack Snyder's Watchmen, especially if you are familiar with the source material, for me, whenever I watched that movie, I kept thinking to myself, okay, there's supposed to be a line right there that they cut. Or something like that. I actually haven't seen the theatrical version, but I did watch a scene on YouTube, and I remember thinking, whoa, they've like cut a whole bunch of dialogue here that I remember from the comic book. And then if you watch the extended version, which is like an hour longer, then I say to myself, oh, okay, this is pretty much the comic book. It's taking all of the lines that were cut in the theatrical version, and then it's adding them in to the longer version. This kind of feels like that. There are many moments here where I remember thinking, wait a minute, there's a line missing here, or they have truncated this conversation just a little bit, and you're still getting the highlights of the movie. It's not like entire scenes are missing or anything like that. But if you are familiar with Star Wars The Original Trilogy, you might be saying, hang on a second, Obi-Wan is supposed to say something right here, and he doesn't say it, it just cuts to another scene. So it's a very bizarre experience. I feel like if this book had come out in 1984, shortly after Return of the Jedi left theaters, it would have done gangbusters, because people might not be able to convince their parents, hey, can you buy me Return of the Jedi? It's $25 on VHS. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that, but this book is $20, and it's the entire trilogy. And I think kids would have eaten this up like candy. But in this day and age, I don't really understand what the point is of trying to recreate this when we already have access to the original trilogy in many different capacities. So I guess I should talk about the artwork. I do like the art. It has a very cartoony, not really anime feel. This kind of, I can't think of a good cartoon that this reminds me of, but it does have this very cartoony kind of feel that makes me think they were trying to target this toward a younger audience. Let me see if I can, here's a good picture of Luke with Yoda. So it is very cartoony, kind of playing fast and loose with the details. And sometimes I think, hey, this is spot on. And then sometimes I'm thinking, they kind of missed the mark here. There are several times where Luke looks like a little kid. Specifically, I'm not going to try and find a scene, but when Luke puts on the helmet with the blast shield covering his face, he looks like Anakin from the prequels whenever he's pod racing. He looks like a 10-year-old, and he's supposed to be like 19 or 20. So I'm not going to dog too hard on the art. I think it's pretty good. If you are trying to target little kids as your audience, I don't think that they are going to mind. I think that they would really dig this. But like I said, this is one of those things, I'm not really sure what I was expecting. If I was expecting them to try and like recreate the trilogy, or maybe remake the trilogy and make it a little bit different than what happened, try and add some stuff that wasn't in there. I'm not really sure what I was expecting, but I was a little disappointed with this. Maybe if you showed this to somebody who never watched the movies, they might have a very different experience. Although I feel like, again, if you wanted to introduce someone to Star Wars, you would just do it with the movies. You wouldn't do it with a comic book adaptation of the movies. So that's about all that I have to say about this book. I hope you guys like this video, and I will be back in the future with some more videos. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.